In the late 18th century, the British Empire was the most powerful force on Earth. It commanded the world's strongest navy, a professional army, and vast global resources. Facing it were 13 American colonies with no standing army, little money, and no unified government. On paper, the American cause looked hopeless. Yet against all expectations, the colonies survived and defeated the greatest empire of their age. The war began in 1775 as a struggle not for independence, but for rights. Colonial militias confronted British troops at Lexington and Concord, fighting to defend local autonomy. These early clashes revealed a critical weakness in British strategy. The empire was fighting a war thousands of miles from home. Supplying and reinforcing troops across the Atlantic was slow, expensive, and vulnerable to disruption. The colonists, by contrast, were fighting on familiar ground. Geography played a decisive role. The vast American landscape worked against British control. Cities like Boston, New York, and Philadelphia could be captured, but holding the countryside was far more difficult. Patriot forces relied on local support, using roads, forests, and rivers they knew intimately. British troops often found themselves isolated, surrounded by hostile populations unwilling to cooperate. Another key advantage was the type of war the colonists fought. The Continental Army, under George Washington, avoided decisive battles when possible. Instead of trying to destroy British forces outright, Washington focused on survival. As long as the army existed, the revolution lived. This strategy frustrated British commanders, who expected traditional European warfare with clear victories and surrender. Militia forces also played a vital role. Though often criticized for poor discipline, militias disrupted British movements, harassed supply lines, and gathered intelligence. Their presence made it impossible for British troops to feel secure, even after winning major engagements. War became a constant drain rather than a series of clear triumphs. Leadership proved critical. George Washington was not a brilliant tactician in the European sense, but he possessed patience, resilience, and political awareness. He understood that time was on the American side. British public support for the war slowly eroded as costs mounted and victory remained elusive. Washington also managed internal tensions within the army, holding together a fragile coalition of colonies with differing interests. Foreign intervention ultimately tipped the balance. The American victory at Saratoga in 1777 convinced France that the rebellion had a real chance of success. France entered the war openly in 1778, providing money, weapons, troops, and most importantly, naval power. Later, Spain and the Dutch Republic also joined the conflict against Britain, transforming a colonial rebellion into a global war. This global dimension strained British resources. Britain now had to defend territories in the Caribbean, Europe, and India, diverting attention from North America. The Royal Navy, once Britain's greatest strength, became overstretched. French naval support allowed American and Allied forces to challenge British control of the seas for the first time. The decisive moment came in 1781 at Yorktown. British General Charles Cornwallis, trapped on the Virginia coast, expected evacuation by the Royal Navy. Instead, a French fleet blocked British relief at sea, while American and French armies surrounded his forces on land. Cornwallis surrendered, effectively ending major combat operations. Equally important was the political nature of victory. Britain did not lose because its armies were destroyed. It lost because the war became politically unsustainable. The British government faced rising debt, divided public opinion, and growing pressure to focus on more valuable parts of the empire. Continuing the war no longer made sense. The 13 colonies did not defeat the British Empire through sheer force. They won through endurance, strategy, geography, and international alliances. Their victory reshaped global politics and proved that even the most powerful empire could be challenged if the cost of victory became higher than the price of letting go.